All right, so here is your vacation rental budget workbook, and I'm going to tell you 3 different ways that you can use these sheets. I'm sure there's more than 3, but 3 is a good start. So the first is the most simple, and that is really just to use these as a checklist to go through and see exactly what you need for each room. And as I mentioned in the first video, you probably won't need everything that's on every sheet for every room. We always start out with all of the things you might need and then delete the things that you don't need. I think the one that most of you are going to find really helpful as this checklist is the kitchen. We get asked about that a lot. What do you need to furnish your kitchen? And this is a very thorough list. You've got baking dishes, and then we break down exactly what those baking dishes are, cooking tools, things like that. So that's the first way to use it, just as a checklist. You would just print this out, go through, write down quantities, and just keep it with you when you're shopping. The second way is a rough budget, and that is usually when you're just kind of going to estimate how much that you want to spend on each of these things. So, you'll go through and just put in numbers that you think work and end up with a total. This is a really useful exercise because stuff adds up, and when you furnish your vacation rental, you're buying everything at once, and it can be a little bit of a shock to the system. When we furnish our own homes, we do it over time and sort of stretch it out a little bit, but when you furnish vacation rental, you get some sticker shock sometimes because that's a lot of stuff to buy at once. So doing this budget ahead of time will help alleviate some of that and make it less stressful when you start to see those numbers adding up. So that's the second way, is just a rough budget where you're just putting in those numbers yourself, what you think is a reasonable amount to spend on those items, and then you have the totals for each room, and then at the end the totals all together. And as I mentioned in the first video, the formula is already here for the totals. So once you fill in those sheets, it'll get filled in on this page so that you can see everything at a glance. So that's the second way. The third way is the most time consuming, but it's also the most accurate. This is what we do here in the studio. As we are specifying things for a room, we'll have this sheet open and we'll put the exact price for the thing we found. So it can either be what you're actually going to buy or what you've found. So if you're not ready to select the exact thing for your vacation rental yet, you can still get those prices. So back in the first video, I mentioned that you might want to go here on the intro page and make a note of what stores you would reference for good, better, and best. And that's where this kind of estimate comes in. So say you picked IKEA for good and CB2 for better and I don't know, Restoration Hardware for best. We'll have to talk about that later. But for now, let's just say you picked those 3. Then you would just go and you would say, okay, well, my best is Restoration Hardware, so I'm going to go find a sofa on Restoration Hardware that I think is kind of what I would get, and then just put the price in there. Don't overthink this one too much if you're not actually selecting for your vacation rental yet, because that could take a lot of time, but you do want to get some real numbers there sometimes. So that's how you do that. You pick those stores and you go like, okay, all of my purple stuff is coming from say CB2, so I'm going to go pick out all the things that are in this purple and put them in here, and then I'm going to get my total. And that's going to get you a pretty accurate total for each room and then all together. And then that gives you something to measure against so that when you actually start selecting, you can see whether you're above or below that total. And, for some of us, it becomes a little game to stay below. But either way, you're not going to be surprised then. You're going to have your budget with real numbers in it and know exactly how much you can expect to spend for each room. So that's the 3 ways, either as a checklist, as a rough estimate, or as a more precise estimate.